My name's Clara, and I'm 33. I'm sitting at my desk, the one I've had for years, clutching a coffee mug from a Saudi client who called me family. Whispers float around the office about Nathan, our new CEO, who's all sharp suits and sharper words. I speak Arabic, the only one here who does keeping our Middle Eastern clients close. But yesterday, I heard Nathan call me old and useless in a meeting I wasn't meant to hear. Have you ever been underestimated at work? Drop a comment and hit subscribe if you felt overlooked. I sat at my desk, the hum of the Chicago office wrapping around me like a familiar blanket. My computer screen glowed with spreadsheets, each row a thread tying me to clients across the Middle East. I'd spent years building those ties, my Arabic weaving trust through every call, every contract. The office was sleek, all-glass walls and polished desks. But my corner felt personal, with a small plant I'd nursed back from wilting and a framed certificate from a client conference in Dubai. This morning, though, the air felt different, heavier. Nathan had been CEO for barely a week, and already the whispers followed him. Colleagues huddled by the coffee machine, their voices low, talking about his big plans to modernize. I tried to focus on my work, pulling up an email from a Qatari client, Mr. Khalid, who needed a new trade proposal by Friday. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, crafting a response in Arabic, the words flowing like a song I'd known forever. I'd learned Arabic in college, not from textbooks, but from Mrs. Hannah, my old neighbor in Ann Arbor. She was Lebanese with a laugh that filled her tiny kitchen and hands that shaped baklava like art. Over cups of cardamom tea, she taught me phrases, stories, the rhythm of the language. By the time I graduated, I was fluent, and this job fell into my lap like it was meant to be. I was 25, then eager to prove myself. Now at 33, I was the one clients asked for by name. But Nathan didn't seem to care about that. I'd sent him my quarterly report detailing how our Middle Eastern accounts brought in 20% of the firm's revenue. No reply. Instead, he'd been praising Mia, a 26-year-old who joined last year. She was sharp, no question, with a knack for Instagram campaigns that got clients buzzing. Yesterday, I'd seen her in Nathan's office laughing over a laptop while I was stuck revising contracts. It stung, but I told myself it was just new leadership, a phase. Then the email came. Nathan had scheduled a team meeting for tomorrow when I wasn't invited to. The subject line read, "New Client Strategy." My stomach twisted. I scrolled through the invite list, seeing Mia's name along with others from marketing, but not mine. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking, and stared at the ceiling. Was this about his modernizing? Did he think my work, my language didn't fit his vision? I tried to shake it off, diving back into Mr. Khalid's proposal. But my mind kept drifting. Was I too old for this? At 33, I wasn't exactly ancient. But Nathan, barely 30 himself, seemed to see me as a relic. I thought of Mrs. Hannah, how she'd call me her bright star, how she'd say my voice carried weight. I needed that weight now, but doubt was creeping in, heavy as a winter coat. The office was quieting down, most people gone for lunch when Greg stopped by my desk. He was in IT, a lanky guy with glasses who always seemed to know when something was off. He leaned against my cubicle, holding a soda, and gave me a look. "You okay, Clara? You've been staring at that screen like it's a puzzle." I forced a smile. "Just a lot on my plate. You know clients." He nodded, but his eyes didn't buy it. "Heard about the meeting tomorrow. Kinda weird you're not on the list." My chest tightened. So it wasn't just me noticing. "Yeah, well, maybe Nathan's got his reasons." Greg took a sip of his soda, then lowered his voice. "He did the same to me last year before he was CEO. Passed me over for a project lead, gave it to some new guy who crashed the server in a week. Said I wasn't innovative enough. Hurt like hell." I looked at him, surprised. Greg was solid, the guy who fixed every tech disaster without complaint. "What did you do?" "Kept going," he said. "Proved him wrong by doing my job better than anyone. But it's not easy, Clara. I know what it's like to feel invisible." His words hit me not hard, but deep. Invisible. That's what this felt like. I thanked him, and he wandered off, leaving me with my thoughts. I opened a drawer, fishing out an old client folder, and found a voicemail I'd saved from Mr. Khalid last year. His voice was warm, steady, thanking me for catching a contract error that saved his company thousands. I played it twice, letting his words anchor me. I wasn't invisible to him. But as I closed the folder, the doubt crept back. Nathan's meeting loomed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming, something that would test me in ways I wasn't ready for. I glanced at my plant, its leaves catching the afternoon light, and wondered if I was wilting too, just waiting for someone to notice. The next morning, I walked into the office with a knot in my stomach, my heels clicking against the polished floor. The meeting Nathan had scheduled was in an hour, and though I wasn't invited, I couldn't just sit at my desk pretending it didn't matter. I wore my favorite blazer, navy blue, the one I'd bought after landing my first big client. It felt like armor, but my hands still shook as I poured coffee from the break room pot. I settled at my desk, trying to focus on a new email from a Bahraini client about export regulations. My Arabic translations usually came easy, each word a bridge between me and them, but today my mind was foggy. I kept glancing at the conference room, its glass walls revealing nothing yet. Colleagues passed by, some offering tight smiles, others avoiding my eyes. The air felt thick, like everyone knew something I didn't. Then Nathan called me into his office. I stood smoothing my blazer and walked across the open-plan floor, feeling every stare. His office was all sharp angles, a chrome desk, and a view of Lake Michigan that screamed power. He was leaning back in his chair, scrolling on his phone, and barely looked up as I entered. "Claire, right?" he said, getting my name wrong. I froze, my throat tightening. "It's Clara," I corrected, keeping my voice steady. He shrugged like it didn't matter and gestured to a chair. "Sit. We need to talk about your role." I sat, my hands clasped in my lap, and waited. He tapped his pen against the desk, the rhythm grating. "I've been reviewing the team, and frankly, I'm not sure why you're still doing things the old way. Handwritten notes, phone calls. We're moving to digital platforms, automated systems. Clients want efficiency, not chats in Arabic." I swallowed hard, heat rising in my chest. My clients value personal connection. Speaking their language builds trust. "Our Middle Eastern accounts," he cut me off, waving a hand. "We need fresh faces for Dubai, Clara. People who get the new direction. Mia's already pitching ideas for the Qatari deal." The room seemed to shrink, his words landing like stones. Fresh faces. Mia, who'd been here a year, who didn't know a word of Arabic beyond salam. I wanted to argue, to list every deal I'd closed, every client who'd stayed because of me, but my voice caught. "I've managed those accounts for years," I said, quieter than I meant. "They rely on me." Nathan leaned forward, his eyes cold. "Relying on one person is a liability. We're a team, not a solo act. Step up or step aside." I left his office, my face burning, and headed straight for the bathroom. The fluorescent lights buzzed as I gripped the sink, staring at my reflection. My dark hair was pulled back neatly, but my eyes looked tired, like they'd seen too much. Was he right? Was I holding on to something outdated? I thought of my clients, their voices warm over the phone, the way they'd ask about my life, not just business. That wasn't a liability. That was strength. Back at my desk, I tried to work, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Lunchtime came, and I met Sarah in the cafeteria, a corner table by the window. She was HR, my friend, since we bonded over bad coffee at orientation 5 years ago. She looked frazzled, her blonde curls escaping her ponytail, her eyes darting around. "You okay?" I asked, pushing my salad around my plate. She sighed, lowering her voice. "Nathan's pushing for layoffs, Clara. He's got this list, and I shouldn't say this, but your name's on it. I'm trying to fight it, but he's relentless. I can't lose this job, not with my kid." My fork stopped midair. Layoffs. The word felt like a punch. "Why me?" I asked, though I already knew. Sarah hesitated, her fingers twisting a napkin. "He thinks you're replaceable. Says the language stuff isn't critical anymore." "I'm so sorry." Replaceable. The word echoed sharp and final. I nodded, unable to speak, and she reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I didn't want pity. I wanted to scream. After lunch, I was walking past the break room when I heard Mia's voice, light and careless. "Clara's out of her depth," she was saying to someone. "I mean, she's nice, but Nathan wants big moves." I'm taking her clients to the next level. I stopped hidden by the doorframe, my heart pounding. Mia didn't know I was there, didn't know how her words cut. I'd trained her when she started, shown her how to read client contracts, and now she was laughing, ready to replace me. I slipped away before she saw me, my chest tight with something I couldn't name: anger, betrayal, fear. Back at my desk, I opened a photo on my phone, one I'd taken with Mrs. Hanna years ago. We were at her daughter's wedding, her smile wide, her hand on my shoulder. She'd always said I had a gift, that my words could move mountains. But right now, those mountains felt like they were crumbling, and I was standing at the bottom alone with Nathan's voice in my head, calling me a liability. I closed my eyes, willing myself to hold on, but the ground beneath me was shifting, and I didn't know how to stop it. The office felt like a cage the next week, every glass wall closing in. I was still reeling from Nathan's words, his threat to step up or step aside echoing in my head. Then the email hit, sent to the whole team. Nathan announced a restructuring effective immediately. Mia was taking over my Qatari account, the one I'd nurtured for years. I was reassigned to data entry, a job I hadn't touched since my first month here. My screen blurred as I read it, my pulse hammering in my ears. I looked around expecting outrage, but the office just buzzed on. Colleagues typed, phones rang, and a few glanced my way with pity before looking down. I wanted to stand up to shout that this was wrong, but my legs felt heavy, glued to my chair. Data entry. It wasn't just a demotion. It was erasure, like everything I'd built was being wiped clean. I forced myself to open a spreadsheet, but my fingers hovered, useless. I thought of Mr. Khalid, how we'd spent hours on calls, not just about contracts, but about his daughter's graduation, his love for old poetry. Would Mia even bother to learn his name? I opened my email, drafting a message to him, my words careful but firm, offering to assist during the transition. I hit send, my heart in my throat, and waited. No reply came. The silence was deafening, but the office wasn't. By noon, whispers spread, people clustering near the printer, their voices low but sharp. "Clara's out of her league," I heard someone say, not even hiding it. "Nathan's right to shake things up." I kept my eyes on my screen, pretending I didn't hear, but each word was a needle pricking deeper. I'd always thought this team respected me, but now I wondered if they'd just been polite, waiting for someone like Nathan to call me obsolete. My phone buzzed, a call from my sister Rachel. I slipped into a quiet hallway, answering in a whisper. "Clara, what's going on?" she demanded, her voice all fire. "Greg texted me about this restructuring nonsense. You need to quit now. This place doesn't deserve you." I leaned against the wall, the cold plaster grounding me. Rachel was a freelancer, always jumping between gigs, never tethered to a boss like I was. "I can't just quit," I said, my voice tighter than I meant. "I have bills, a mortgage. I need this job." "You need your dignity," she shot back. "They're humiliating you. Walk away before it gets worse." I closed my eyes, picturing my house, the one I'd bought alone at 29, every payment a victory. Quitting would mean losing that, starting over. "I'm not you, Rachel," I said, softer now. "I'll figure it out." She sighed, and we hung up, but her words lingered, stirring a fear I couldn't shake. What if she was right? What if this was just the beginning? I returned to my desk, the spreadsheet still open, mocking me. I started typing, entering numbers like a robot, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying every meeting, every client call, searching for where I'd gone wrong. Then I found it tucked in a folder I hadn't opened in months, a handwritten note from my old boss, Ellen, who'd retired last year. "Clara, your skills are irreplaceable," she'd written after I closed a deal with a Kuwaiti firm. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." I traced the ink, her words a lifeline, but they stung too. Irreplaceable. Nathan clearly didn't think so, and now the whole office seemed to agree. By afternoon, Nathan called a team huddle, no glass walls this time, just us in the open. He stood at the front, all confidence, talking about synergy and growth. Then he gestured to Mia. "She's leading our Qatari pitch next week," he said, his smile wide. "Big things ahead." Mia nodded, her cheeks pink, but I saw her hands twist nervously. She wasn't ready, and I knew it. I wanted to feel sorry for her, but all I felt was a slow burn in my chest. That was my client my work handed over like it was nothing. I looked at Nathan hoping he'd acknowledge me, but his eyes slid past like I was already gone. As the huddle ended, colleagues drifted back to their desks, but I stayed rooted, my hands clenched at my sides. Nathan's words about Mia leading the Qatari pitch kept replaying, each one a jab to my chest. I wanted to march up to him, demand an explanation, but the weight of everyone's eyes held me back. Instead, I slipped into the conference room for the client pitch rehearsal. A session Nathan had insisted I attend, though I wasn't presenting. It felt like a punishment being forced to watch my work handed over. The room was bright, too bright, with sunlight streaming through the windows, glinting off the long table. Mia stood at the front, fumbling with a projector remote, her notes scattered. Nathan sat at the head, tapping his phone, while a few others from marketing flipped through their laptops. I took a seat in the back, my notebook unopened, trying to blend into the wall. Mia started her pitch, her voice shaky as she read from a script. "We're excited to, partner with your firm," she said, then attempted an Arabic greeting. "As-salam, alaikum." The words came out mangled, like she'd practiced for 10 minutes and called it enough. My stomach twisted. I'd spent years perfecting those phrases, knowing the right tone could seal a deal. Mr. Khalid deserved better than this. Nathan clapped, oblivious. "Great start, Mia. Keep it up." Then he turned to me, his smile sharp. "Clara, you've done this before. Why didn't you prep her better?" The room went quiet, all eyes on me. My mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Prep her? I'd been buried in data entry, locked out of client work. I wasn't given time. I said finally, my voice low but steady. "You reassigned me." He raised an eyebrow like I'd just proven his point. "Teamwork, Clara. If you can't support your colleagues, that's on you." Heat flooded my face, a mix of shame and rage. I looked at Mia, hoping she'd say something, anything, but she just stared at her notes, her cheeks red. The others shifted in their seats, avoiding my gaze. I was drowning in that room, and no one was throwing me a line. After the rehearsal, I stayed late, the office emptying out the hum of the air conditioning, my only company. I opened my laptop, pulling up old client emails, searching for something to hold on to. That's when Greg found me, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He didn't sit, just stood by my desk, his voice barely above a whisper. "Clara, I heard something you need to know. Nathan's cutting the language training budget. Says it's a waste, that English is enough for clients now." I stared at him, my screen casting a pale glow on his glasses. "But half our revenue comes from Arabic-speaking clients," I said, my voice cracking. "He can't just..." "He can," Greg said, his jaw tight. "He's betting on automation, on people like Mia who'll follow his lead. I saw the budget memo. It's already done." I leaned back, my chair creaking, and pressed my hands to my face. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the clients, the trust I'd built, the language that had opened doors. Nathan was tearing it all down, and I was supposed to sit quietly entering data while he gambled with their loyalty. I tried to work, but my eyes kept drifting to a small frame on my desk, a gift from a client in Oman. It held a single word in Arabic calligraphy: saber patience. I'd always loved it, the way the letters curled like a promise. But now it felt like a taunt. Patience for what? For Nathan to erase me completely. For Mia to butcher another pitch. For the clients to realize they'd been betrayed. I stood, grabbing my coat, and headed for the elevator. The office was dark now, just shadows and the faint glow of exit signs. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the metal, my face pale, my eyes hollow. I didn't recognize myself, and in that moment I realized something worse than Nathan's dismissal or Mia's fumbled words. I was starting to believe I didn't belong here anymore. Monday morning hit like a storm. I walked into the office, my bag heavy on my shoulder, the weight of the past week dragging me down. The elevator ride felt endless, each ding a countdown to something I couldn't name. I'd barely slept, my mind churning with Greg's warning about the budget cuts, the sting of Mia's pitch, the way my own reflection had betrayed me. I told myself I'd survive this, keep my head down, but the air felt charged like a fuse already lit. I was at my desk sorting through pointless data entries when Sarah appeared, her face pale, her HR badge clipped to her blouse. "Clara, Nathan wants you in the boardroom. Now." Her voice was tight and she wouldn't meet my eyes. My stomach dropped. I stood smoothing my skirt and followed her down the hall, my heels echoing like gunfire on the hardwood floor. The boardroom was stark all-white walls and a long mahogany table that gleamed under the lights. Nathan sat at the far end, his suit crisp, his hands folded like a judge. Another HR rep, a guy I barely knew, stood by the door holding a folder. Sarah took a seat beside Nathan, her hands twisting in her lap. I stopped in the doorway, my breath shallow, and forced myself to walk in. "Sit," Nathan said, not looking up from his phone. His tone was flat final. I sank into a chair, the leather cold against my legs, and waited. The room was too quiet, the kind of quiet that screams trouble. He set his phone down, his eyes locking onto mine, cold and unyielding. "Clara, we're letting you go. Effective immediately." The words hit like a slap, sharp and disorienting. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white. Why I managed my voice barely a whisper. Nathan leaned back, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You're redundant. We're streamlining and your role doesn't fit. You're too old for the direction we're taking, too set in your ways. Useless, really. Useless." The word landed like a blade, cutting deeper than anything he'd said before. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with a rage so raw it scared me. I looked at Sarah, hoping for a lifeline, but she stared at the table, her fingers digging into her palms. The HR guy shifted, his shoes squeaking, and I realized no one was going to speak for me. "I'm the only one who speaks Arabic," I said, my voice shaking but louder now. "Our biggest clients, the Qatari firm Bahrain Oman, they stay because of me. You can't just—" "I can," Nathan cut in, his voice like ice. "We don't need one-trick ponies. Mia's handling things now. You're done. One-trick pony." The dismissal was so casual, so cruel, it stole my breath. I thought of every late night I'd spent on calls, every contract I'd saved, every client who'd sent me gifts, called me friend. All of it reduced to nothing in this sterile room. My mind flashed to Mrs. Hanna, her voice telling me I was enough, but here under Nathan's stare I felt like I was disappearing. Why now? I pressed, leaning forward, my voice cracking. What did I do? Nathan sighed like I was wasting his time. "Redundancy, like I said. Business decision. You'll get 2 weeks severance. Sign the paperwork and go." The HR guy slid a folder toward me, his face blank. I didn't touch it. My heart was pounding, a drumbeat of anger and disbelief. This wasn't just a firing. It was personal. Nathan's smirk, his choice of words. Old useless felt like a deliberate twist of the knife. I looked at Sarah again, my friend, the one who'd warned me about layoffs, but she wouldn't look up. Her silence was louder than Nathan's cruelty. I stood, my legs unsteady, and grabbed my bag. "You're making a mistake," I said, my voice low, trembling with something I couldn't control. "You have no idea what you're throwing away." Nathan laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed in the room. "I know exactly what I'm doing. Good luck, Clara." I turned, walking out my steps mechanical, my mind a blur. The boardroom door closed behind me, and I was alone in the hallway, the hum of the office distant like it belonged to someone else's life. My hands shook as I reached into my bag, and a business card slipped out, one Mr. Khalid had given me years ago, his name embossed in gold. I stared at it, my chest tight, and felt something break inside me, not just pain, but a fury I didn't know I had. I stumbled back to my desk, the hallway a blur, Mr. Khalid's card still clutched in my hand. The office was alive now, phones buzzing, keyboards clacking, but it felt like I was underwater, every sound muffled. My cubicle looked foreign, the neat stacks of papers, the sticky notes with client deadlines, all mocking me. I sank into my chair, the fabric worn from years of my weight, and tried to breathe. Useless. The word pulsed in my head. Nathan's voice carving it into me. Colleagues moved around me, their glances quick, like I was a ghost they didn't want to acknowledge. I started packing my hands, moving on autopilot, shoving pens and a notepad into my bag. That's when Mia appeared, her steps hesitant, her lipstick too bright against her pale face. "Clara, I heard," she said, her voice small. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." I looked up, my fingers frozen around a stapler. Her eyes were wide, guilty, but it didn't soften the ache in my chest. "You didn't mean it," I said, my voice low, sharp. "You took my client's Mia. You stood there while Nathan tore me apart. Don't act like you're innocent." She flinched, stepping back. "I didn't ask for this. He said I was the future. I thought I could handle it." Her voice cracked, and for a second, I saw the girl I'd trained, the one who'd been nervous her first week. But then I remembered her laughing in the break room, saying I was out of my depth, and any pity I felt burned away. "Handle it," I snapped, standing now, my bag slipping to the floor. "You can't even say, 'Assalamu alaikum,' right? Those clients trusted me, Mia. Years of work and you let him throw it away." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. A few heads turned, colleagues pausing mid-step, their whispers starting to ripple. I didn't care. The anger was spilling out, hot and unstoppable. Mia's eyes filled with tears, and she mumbled something, backing away. But I barely heard her. The room was spinning, the weight of Nathan's words. Sarah's silence. Mia's betrayal crashing down. I grabbed my coat, ready to leave, when Greg rushed over, his laptop under his arm, his face tense. "Clara, wait," he whispered, pulling me toward the corner by the water cooler. "I found something. Nathan's emails from the server. He's pitching to the Qatari firm himself next week. No Arabic, no prep, just him and some generic slides. He's banking on charm to keep them." I stared at him, my breath catching. "He's what?" My voice was barely audible, but inside something roared. Mr. Khalid, who valued respect, who'd once spent an hour reciting Rumi to me over coffee, was being reduced to a checkbox on Nathan's agenda. It wasn't just me Nathan was erasing. It was everything I'd built, the trust, the care, the language that had bound us. Greg handed me a USB drive, his hand shaking slightly. "It's all there. His plans, the budget cuts, everything. I could get fired for this, but you need to know." His eyes searched mine, urgent, like he was handing me a weapon I didn't know how to use. I took the drive, its plastic cool against my palm, and nodded, unable to speak. My mind was racing, picturing Nathan in a boardroom, stumbling through a pitch, oblivious to the culture, the history, the people he was supposed to serve. It was reckless, insulting, a betrayal not just of me, but of every client who'd chosen us because of what I brought. I turned back to my desk, the office louder now, the whispers growing bolder. "She's done," someone murmured, not even trying to hide it. I caught a glimpse of Sarah by the copy machine, her head down, her HR badge glinting like a shield. She hadn't come to check on me, hadn't called. My friend, the one I'd trusted, was letting me drown. I stuffed the USB drive into my pocket, my hands trembling so hard I dropped my keys. I bent to pick them up, and my eyes landed on a small keychain, a gift from a Bahraini client engraved with my initials. It was a reminder of who I'd been, who I still was, but right now it felt like a relic from a life I'd lost. I stood, my chest hollow, my anger giving way to something worse, a bone-deep despair that made me wonder if Nathan was right, if I really was nothing at all. I drove home that night, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket, the city lights streaking past like accusations. My house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, the porch light flickering as if it knew I was broken. Inside, I dropped my bag on the kitchen counter, the clatter loud in the silence. My hands were still shaking, Nathan's words, useless, redundant, looping in my head. But Greg's revelation about the Qatari pitch was louder, a spark in the wreckage of my day. I sank onto the couch, the cushions sagging under me, and stared at the USB drive in my hand. It was small, unassuming, and it held proof of Nathan's recklessness, his plan to charm clients he didn't understand. I thought of Mr. Khalid, his quiet dignity, the way he'd trusted me to represent his firm. Nathan was going to ruin that, and I couldn't just walk away and let it happen. My laptop sat on the coffee table, its screen dark. I opened it, the glow harsh against my tired eyes, and plugged in the drive. The files loaded slowly, each one a glimpse into Nathan's mind: emails about cost-cutting memos, dismissing language training, a draft of his pitch deck with bullet points so generic they could have been for any company anywhere. It was worse than I'd imagined. No mention of cultural nuance, no acknowledgement of the Arabic that had sealed our deals. Just arrogance typed out in black and white. I leaned back, my breath uneven, and felt a shift inside me. Not anger anymore, but something sharper: resolve. I'd spent years building trust with clients, not for Nathan, not for the firm, but for them, for the work I believed in. I wasn't going to let him erase that. But what could I do? I was fired, outcast, my name already fading from the office. Then I remembered Mrs. Hannah's voice, soft but fierce, from years ago. Your voice is your power. Use it. I stood pacing the living room, my bare feet cold on the hardwood. My desk was in the corner, cluttered with bills and a half-dead succulent. I cleared a space, sat down, and opened a new document. My fingers hovered over the keys, hesitant, then started typing. A proposal not for Nathan, not for the firm, but for Mr. Khalid directly. I'd offered to consult freelance to keep his firm's interests safe, to do what I'd always done: speak his language, understand his needs. The words came slowly at first, each one a step into unknown territory. I wrote about my experience, my fluency, the deals we'd closed together. I didn't mention Nathan's name, didn't stoop to his level, but I hinted at the risks of changing representation, the value of continuity. My heart pounded as I typed, fear whispering that this was crazy, that I was overstepping, that I'd fail. But I kept going, picturing Mr. Khalid reading it, nodding, remembering why he'd trusted me. The phone rang, shattering my focus. It was Rachel, her name lighting up the screen. I almost ignored it, but her call with me last week, her insistence that I deserved better, pulled me to answer. "Clara, you okay?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. No trace of her normal fire. I exhaled, gripping the phone. Not really. They fired me today. Nathan called me useless to my face. She cursed loud enough to make me wince. That's it. You're suing. I know a lawyer, Clara, we can— No, I cut her off, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. I'm not suing. I'm doing something else. I told her about the proposal, the USB drive Nathan's plan to pitch without Arabic. She listened, quiet for once, and when I finished, she laughed, a warm, proud sound. That's my sister, she said. But be careful. Nathan's not above playing dirty. You sure you're ready for this? I looked at the screen, the proposal half written, my words staring back at me. I have to be, I said and meant it. We hung up and I turned back to the document, my fingers steadier now. I wrapped the scarf Mrs. Hannah had given me years ago around my shoulders, its soft silk a reminder of her strength, her belief in me. The room was quiet, just the hum of my laptop and the distant chirp of crickets outside. I typed faster, the proposal taking shape, each sentence a small act of defiance. I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot, and as the clock ticked past midnight, I felt something ignite inside me, a fire Nathan couldn't put out. The cursor blinked on my screen, the proposal for Mr. Khalid, nearly done, its words a lifeline I was weaving in the dark. My living room was still, the scarf around my shoulders, soft but heavy, like a promise I had to keep. I leaned forward, my fingers steady now, and added a final paragraph offering to meet virtually to discuss how I could support his firm independently. I read it twice, my heart racing, then hit send. The email whooshed away and I exhaled, the sound loud in the quiet house. I stood stretching my stiff back and wandered to the kitchen. The clock read 1 a.m, but sleep felt impossible. I filled a glass with water, the tap's gurgle grounding me, and leaned against the counter, staring at the linoleum floor. What if Mr. Khalid didn't reply? What if Nathan found out and twisted this into something ugly? The doubts were there, clawing, but they didn't stop me. Not tonight. My phone buzzed by a new email notification, a laptop on my laptop screen. I froze, water sloshing in my glass, then rushed to check it. It was Mr. Khalid, his name in bold, and my breath caught. Dear Clara, it began. I was surprised to hear from you directly. Can we schedule a video call tomorrow? I value your expertise and wish to discuss your proposal. I read it again, my eyes stinging not with tears but with relief, a spark of hope I hadn't felt in weeks. Mrs. thought of my Hana I me teaching, how she'd taught me to my with words to stand tall even when she whirled was to pushing back. This was my fight. Stand small but real. I set the table. Coffee cold mug my chair sat on my desk. The next morning I woke early, my body aching from the couch but my mind sharp. I dressed carefully, choosing a cream blouse that felt like a fresh start, and set up my laptop on the dining table. The video call was at 10, and I spent the hour before sipping coffee rehearsing what I'd say. My notes were bullet points about trust continuity, the cultural gaps Nathan's firm was ignoring. I wasn't just pitching myself, I was protecting what I'd built. When the call connected, Mr. Khalid's face filled the chair. His gray beard neatly trimmed his eyes, warm but serious. "Clara," he said in Arabic, his voice steady. "I was troubled to hear you're no longer with the firm. What happened?" I took a breath, my hands clasped under the table, and silent chose my voice. "There were changes in leadership," I said, keeping my tone even. "I was let go, but my commitment to your firm hasn't. I'm offering to consult independently to ensure your needs are met in Arabic with the respect you deserve." He nodded, leaning back in his chair, and asked about my voice. I spoke fluently, my voice flowing Arabic, my Arabic detailing a strategy tailored to his expansion. I mentioned a Nathan's not by silence, but name, but as a generic approach that ignored his firm's. I would have smiled, his expression, unreadable, nodded, then said, "I've been always thinking about us, you. I'll consider this." I connected my laptop screen, the laptop dark heart, racing heart. I'd done it. I'd taken the fight not just to save myself. I was a client's warning card, a laptop, a chest on my chest. I should have been proud, but an email from my staff was a new email. This time from Nathan. Clara chose to pursue other opportunities, it read. I wish her well. I lie was so blatant, I was. I was about to slam it, laptop shut. It was. But a new text came. Mia. Clara, I heard rumors. You're spreading rumors. You stole my client data. I'd true him, told him not true, but he's a furious warning. Watch out. My twisted stomach was back sharper now. I was a young woman in class, a memory from when I'd spoken to a bully who stood my accent. I'd won by not shouting, but being by knowing better, by worth knowing. I sat back, Mrs. Laptop open, and started typing a client the contract for Mr. Fingers Khalid, my fingers each a word, a refusal. My laughed at a client laughed, laughter in laughter table. I laughed. The room was now dark, the light slanting through the window blinds a room, and I typed a note, a client's card with a pattern in gold embroidery catching a light. I paused, my hands whispering, and the draped around a chair, its pattern a soft act. I was roaring. I sat at my dining table, the contract for Mr. Email sent by email. Sent email, my open, still hot laptop. The house was quiet, a quiet that felt like a afterstorm. A faint ticking clock ticked the silence. The afternoon, a new email arrived. From a new email from Mr. Khalid. Clara, I'm with your proposal, Clara, impressed with our consultant. I'd caught my breath, a triumph rushing to relief, mixing with relief, disbelief. I'd done it, but I'd won. Feel fragile like I'd drop scared. I felt the shift, my floor, the wet socks on my sidewalk, the tile. What'd I do? Do his email. I'd claimed I'd quit was a lie spreading to the office. I told him he'd point out the office clients and blow him at me. I was a phone screen, half expecting me furious at a message, nothing but silence. I called to her strained voice. Strained. Clara, I'm all over it, office, Sarah said. Clara said, I'm saying the Qatari firm you them out. I'm talking about legal action. I stood by the window, watching curtains parted, watching. Words were a her, a refusal but a warning lifeline. I nodded, saying my voice. I didn't have to. I said my voice said, Sarah said, saying, you didn't need anyone take this to anyone. I didn't know I didn't. I didn't need to. She sighed. Aside said, I'm stuck. I'm stuck with my kid. I'm scared to. I'm trying to see me fight, but it's scary. I was said caught like I'd been caught trapped survival. I was a friend, but a courage. I nodded. I need you'll see. You'll need something stronger, I said, and we hung up and I fell to Sarah. I sat back my couch at my couch, the worn fabric worn. Sarah felt words like stirred not just in pride. I was the morning I met a lawyer, a friend who'd worked a office downtown. I explained everything, my firing USB drive, the USB. I listened to her notes, nodding her glasses down her nose. You've got a for wrongful termination, I said. But you'll come hard. You save savings. I laughed, my throat tight. The money I'd saved a shield against my future. I was a cost her office, my city. I home office back home. A package found my door at my doorstep, wrapped small in a paper wrapped. Inside was a pen, a silver pen, its engraved surface a gift from a client's client team. I smiled, its note warm, a palm warm. Thank you for your partnership. I held it up the chest, warm tight, a warm. But as I stood the table on my table, the threat loomed. I woke to the silence of rain, a patter soft against my bedroom window, the pen's silver pen still sitting on my desk where I'd left it up. I'd pulled on my sweater, feeling frayed at the cuffs, frayed a gray reminder I was. I was brewing coffee, the gurgling machine humming, and stood by the counter, leaning against the counter. A new email from a client, one I'd worked years with years ago. Clara, heard you're gone. I'd like to continue with you. My lifted heart sank, then sank. Another jumping client ship, another to blow him at Nathan's firm. I brewed coffee, the machine coffee gurgling my mug hands, warming my hands. The trust, Bahraini client's trust, was but it came with a cost. I was the reason. I thought of the office colleagues who'd whispered my back behind my back, shared cakes, birthday cakes, swapped over stories over lunch. Were now scared now, they're at jobs at risk because of me. My buzzed phone buzzed a text from Greg. Clara. I'm out. Took a firm rival. I'm bleeding it. You showed this. I stared at my screen, my thumb hovering over A escape. Greg's escape. A win, but you started this. I said, a wait, I didn't mean to carry. I spent the morning drafting for contracts for a client, my open laptop on the dining table, scattered papers, scattered leaves like leaves. There was my familiar phrases flowing, but my drifted mind kept drifting to Nathan's threat. I paused. I knew email, my eyes anew from an email from a client. They too wanted to work with me. 3 now clients, now all me choosing me over Nathan's. By noon afternoon, a LinkedIn post popped up, a LinkedIn notification popped up. A from post by Mr. Khalid, public tagged my profile to my profile. I clicked, grateful for it, read, I'm impressed for invaluable expertise. I watched stunned comments, climbing like from industry contacts I hadn't spoken to in years. I was a gem. I wrote, I shining said, keep another said. The post was viral, my name, bright shining, bright in a world that had tried dim to dim it. I smiled, my chest tightened instead. I felt spotlight. Sure, and hour later, my pinged inbox pinged a forwarded email from a colleague. No subject line. It was a press release from Nathan's website recent. Client are due. It claimed not the actions of former employees. My wasn't mentioned, but a jab was clear. Then buried in a text about suing all legal action to protect my interests. My stomach was churning. He wasn't just fighting back. Rewriting the story. I stood by the window watching rain, now steady drumming rain. The empty street was empty, plastered leaves plastered too. I thought the warning of Mia's warning about rumors, Nathan's rumors, and wondered if she'd been still caught in the fallout. I thought torn of Sarah, torn between her son's needs, and her courage. My choice to reach Mr. out to Khalid had set motion to this in motion, and it was bigger than me, a crashing wave, crashing everyone I'd known. I backed to my desk, the open post still open, its comments glowing with support. But my eyes fell on a wooden box beside my laptop from a client in Dubai. Client unopened since I'd moved in. I lifted a lid, finding a single pearl inside, pale, smooth and pale. It was a beautiful trust token, but I held it, felt no joy. The world was cheering me on, but Nathan's shadow loomed, and the crumbling firm I'd helped build was crumbling. I closed my box, my fingers lingering on its edge, and sat in silence. The rain outside, louder now, my heavy heart, heavy with I hadn't seen coming. I stood in my new office, a small rented space downtown with a single window overlooking a parking lot. The walls were bare, the desk secondhand, but it was mine. My laptop hummed softly open to a client schedule that now included 3 Middle Eastern firms. The air smelled of fresh paint, a clean start, but my hands still carried the weight of the past weeks. I set a framed picture on the shelf, one of Mrs. Hannah at her garden gate, her eyes bright with a wisdom I was only beginning to understand. It was early, the city just waking, and I was alone arranging files, my movements slow, deliberate. The chaos of Nathan's threats, the firm's collapse, the LinkedIn post that had spread my name, it all felt distant now, like a storm that had passed. I'd won clients, built something new, but the cost lingered, a quiet ache I hadn't named until I saw it in the faces of those I'd left behind. I sat at the desk, the chair creaking under me, and opened a notebook, its pages blank except for a single line I'd written last night. What did this cost me? I traced the words, the ink smudging under my finger. I'd fought for my worth, but I'd lost Sarah's trust, Mia's confidence, the camaraderie of an office I'd called home. I thought of the pearl in my box, a symbol of victory, but also a reminder of the wreckage I'd walked through to get here. The door buzzed and I looked up, surprised. It was too early for clients. I crossed the room, my flat silent on the carpet, and opened it to find Rachel holding a paper bag, her hair damp from the morning mist. "I brought bagels," she said, stepping inside, her smile softer than usual. She looked around, her eyes lingering on the picture of Mrs. Hannah. "You're making this place yours." I took the bag, the warmth of the bagels seeping through, and gestured to the desk. "It's not much yet," I said, my voice quiet. "But it's a start." Rachel looked around, her eyes lingering on the picture. "It's more than a start, Clara. You built this from nothing. I'm proud of you." Her words were warm, but there was a hesitation, a shadow in her gaze. We sat splitting a bagel, the cream cheese tangy on my tongue. "You're throwing a party tonight, right?" I asked, remembering her text about a small gathering to celebrate my new venture. "Who's coming?" She shrugged, picking at her food. "Just a few friends. I invited Sarah, but..." She didn't reply. "I think she's still figuring things out." Her voice was careful, like she didn't want to stir the wound. I nodded, my throat tightening. Sarah's absence was a gap I hadn't expected to feel so deeply. I reached out to her, I said, my fingers crumbling a piece of bagel. "Offered her some freelance work. I hope she takes it." Rachel leaned forward, her elbows on the desk. "You're doing what you can, Clara. You can't carry everyone. You carried yourself, and that's enough for now." Her words settled over me, not heavy but grounding. I looked out the window, the parking lot empty except for a single car, its windshield glinting in the morning light. I'd always thought strength meant fixing everything, saving everyone, but maybe Rachel was right. Maybe it was enough to save myself, to build this small space where I could breathe again. I stood walking to the shelf and adjusted Mrs. Hannah's picture, her smile steadying me. The office was quiet, the city's hum faint beyond the glass. I felt it then, a stillness, not peace exactly, but a pause, a moment to exhale before the world asked for more. My hand rested on the frame, and I let the silence hold me, soft and fleeting like the first light of dawn. Rachel left soon after, the bagel crumbs still scattered on my desk, her footsteps fading down the hall. I sat alone, the office settling into a hush, quiet room. The morning light slanted now soft through the window. My fingers brushed the edge of a notebook, its single question. What did this cost me? Nothing unanswered. It wasn't about anything anymore. It was about what I'd gained, what I'd become. I opened a new email, a message from Sarah. Clara, it began. I'm taking your offer. Part-time to start. Thank you for not giving up on me. My caught breath caught a small relief washing over me. I typed a reply warm but short, welcoming her to the team. As I sent hit, I felt a knot loosen, not tight, but I breathed deeply. Sarah was stepping, and maybe in some small way I'd helped her find ground. The phone rang again, buzzing by a message from Mia. Her message was hesitant, almost formal. Clara, I'm out of a job. The firm's cutting staff. I know I messed up, but could I talk? I want to learn. Maybe from you? I stared at my screen thumb, hovering over a thumb. Mia, who'd laughed my back behind my back, laughed at confidence my confidence was reaching, humbled. I didn't feel not anymore. I felt a clarity, a understanding that she'd been caught in game. I wasn't easy, but it wasn't for her, it was for me, a way to let go of the bitterness that had clung like damp cloth to damp cloth. I thought of an office, a fading memory, now a fading, and I didn't need to carry its weight anymore. A knock at a door startled me. It was Greg, a new badge clipped to a jacket, a grin badge on a badge clipped. Just passing, I said. Stepping inside. Just wanted to see. He glanced, nodding at the sparse setup. A sparse setup. It's good, Clara said. You did this. We talked, his voice. Recounting his role, new role, how I'd pushed him to leave me. You showed me, he said, his eyes steady eyes. To walk away. I smiled a real smile, real one in days, thanked him. As he thanked, I felt a warmth settle. Not a pride, but a gratitude. I walked around to the window, the lot, now empty, dotted with cars, the city beyond, humming beyond. My slipped hand slipped into a pocket, a small stone I'd kept in Mrs. Garden's smooth years, from years of tending it. I rolled it between my fingers, its grounding weight grounding. I'd so much friendship security, but a small quiet, not a loud quiet, but steady like a stone in my hand. I turned around to the desk, my catching eye catching a small sketch taped to a wall, from a client's daughter, all bright, uneven colors and uneven lines. It was she said, where people felt safe. I looked at it, at a stone, then at a stone, and the room felt still grow quiet, the quieter around me now. I wasn't done fighting, but for now, I was here in a space I'd carved, and it was enough. I set a stone beside a sketch. Beside a sketch, its gray, stark curves stark against the colors, and stood in silence, letting it hold me like a friend. My office grew into a rhythm, quiet hum of purpose, quiet with a desk I'd had. Each morning desk was holding tidy, a second-hand clay mug I'd bought, a local market, and a marked calendar marked with calls from clients from Dubai to, I'd 30. And I woke, and a knot I woke with chest without knot in chest, the weight fading, words finally fading. I spent my building days building not a business, but a living that I felt like mine. Morning started coffee, sipped while reviewing emails. I reviewed emails from clients now called partner. Afternoons were my voice, my calls, weaving Arabic, weaving through conversation, each conversation not a tool but a bridge to hear. Hired Sarah part-time. A bright voice, bright over phone, the voice her confidence with each task. Was learning, sitting on my sessions. Her filled notebook filled with phrases, Arabic phrases she'd practiced. The firm, it was a shadow now. I'd read it online that it had filed bankruptcy for bankruptcy. Its barely mentioned in industry circles. I didn't triumph, not like I'd expected. I'd a quiet release. I felt a release like setting a bag I'd carried too long. It had threatened lawsuits, had fizzled my work enough, lawyers' work enough to him at bay. I'd known colleagues, some kind had scattered new jobs to new lives. I didn't reach out to need. This my world was now my smaller world, smaller but truer. Rachel stopped one evening, her tracking muddy boots tracking mud onto my carpet, a wine bottle of wine in her hand. We on floor sat on my carpet, floor glasses on low table. low table. Talked about her project, latest project, my next client. I'd looked at me eyes, softer, eyes than softer. They'd been years and years, and said something. Clara's different, Clara. You're louder, just softer. I nodded the tart wine tart on my tongue, and I realized she'd right. I was the trembling woman who'd trembled in boardroom Nathan's, nor the doubting one who doubted herself. I was new. Someone new. Shaped someone, by cracks, shaped by cracks, but not defined. I started routine. A routine I hadn't had years and years. I'd Friday. I'd walk to a park nearby park. A place, small place, with a under oak tree bench. Under oak tree. I'd sit there on an unopened book, unopened in my lap. Watching world. Kids pigeons chasing pigeons. Couples over, arguing over picnic. Couples arguing an elderly man feeding squirrels. I'd always thought, grand strength meant everything, fixing everything. But maybe was enough. Rachel was enough. Maybe enough to save enough to this small space I could breathe again. One day morning, I found a letter in my handwritten mailbox, handwritten from a client in Oman. Client from Oman. It wasn't business about business. A thanking note. Thanking me for a call I'd listened where I'd listened to worries about his future son's future. You made me seen, I wrote, he wrote. It folded it, tucking it a drawer into a drawer, and felt a warmth spreading through me. Pride, not pride, but a purpose. This why I'd fought, was why I'd fought not to win, but to matter to a voice. Be a voice. That weight carried weight. I looked around my office walls. No bare walls. No longer bear a holding map. Now holding a map. Middle East pins marking cities marked. I'd worked with cities I'd worked with. The was mine space was mine. Perfect, not perfect, but honest. I at my desk sat at my desk. The clay mugs, clay cool palm against my palm, opened my ready laptop, ready for the day. The shifted light shifted, the motes, dust motes dancing, I exhaled. Even slow and even, the outside world, outside humming like it was waiting for me to step into it, whole. I stood in a community center. One Saturday. The filled room filled with chairs, folding chairs, and a professional's dozen young professionals. Their open notebooks, open pens, poised pens ready. I'd a workshop started, a workshop teaching basic Arabic for a way I'd pass on. I'd given what I'd given me. The smelled air smelled of ink marker ink and coffee, instant coffee. The windows letting in a soft afternoon glow. I spoke slowly guiding through phrases, watching faces, light their faces, light as they then stumbled, then succeeded. It wasn't, but I'd felt right like seeds planting seeds, I'd never see grow. As I thought the journey. About the journey. I doubted nights. I'd wakened mornings, I'd woken with purpose. It had been cruel, had been burning away the parts I needed to go, my fear for need for approval. What quieter remained was quieter a who'd not. Woman who'd not shout to be heard. I at my students looked at my students. Their halting voices, halting but earnest, and myself saw myself at 20, eager, unsure, eager but willing, try. The session young woman lingered her, a soft blue hijab, a soft blue. Her shy eyes, shy. Thank you, she said, clutching her notebook. A teacher had a teacher made me, like I feel like I could do. I smiled my throat tight, and handed her a card, my contact with my contact urging to keep practicing. As she left, felt it a ripple, but real small but real of giving building. That evening I cooked dinner alone. A simple dish of rice lentils and rice. The warm kitchen warm with spices. My table was set one for one, but didn't mind. I'd learn to sit with myself to find comfort in the quiet. As I ate, I thought Rachel of Rachel, who'd last week admitted last week she'd my courage, envied my courage. Her fears, own fears, holding back her back. I thought Sarah of Sarah starting and Mia overstarting Mia, rewriting her mistakes. They were finding there, and I was mine, finding mine, not winning by winning, but choosing by choosing, I'd wanted to be. The lesson came to clear me, then clear as a clink, the clink of spoon my spoon, the bowl against the bowl. It wasn't about proving wrong, Nathan wrong, or what I'd reclaiming what I'd lost. It was about knowing my value, not someone else. Because someone else saw it, but I did because I did. Strength wasn't loud. In loud moments, boardroom battles, or viral posts, the viral posts. It was in small teaching, stranger. A stranger forgiving a rival, sitting alone feeling and still feeling whole. I'd to trust, learn to trust, voice my voice to carry, let it carry through the dark. And was enough, that was enough. The table cleared the table, the clinking dishes clinking in the sink, and felt a calm deep settle, deep unshakable and unshakable. The outside world. Outside was noisy, but in my life, small life, found a truth, never useless. You're never useless. If you know you're worth what you're worth. And I knew mine, not title as a title or paycheck a paycheck, but a woman as a woman, fallen, risen, kept walking. What moment made realize, own your own worth, share below it below. I'd love here to hear your story. If this journey, please below, like and subscribe. Join me more for more. Share with someone, with someone needs, who needs. Here they're enough to hear, they're enough. Thank for listening. You for listening, truly. Thank you to finding voices, our voices, to finding yours and yours.